Good morning, cadets. Today we are going to study one of the most important topic, that is interview skills. As we all know, interview is an important selection technique where there is a two-way exchange of information either on one-to-one basis or by an interview panel. The interview gets important information from the candidates and can also judge whether or not they can fit into the organization's culture. With this as a brief introduction, I come to the aim of today's class is to acquaint you all about various interview skills. For ease of understanding and better assimilation, the class will be conducted in three parts as flashed on the screen. In part 1, we will understand what the process of interview involves in it. In part 2, we will study various interview skills, and at the end, in part 3, we will touch upon one of the most important interview for the cadets aspiring to join Indian Armed Forces. Moving on to part 1, interview. What is an interview? As we have discussed earlier, that interview proves important because it connects both the employers as well as job seekers. It assists employers in selecting a right person for a right job. So, to define, interview is basically a structured process in which evaluation of employee is carried by the interviewing person. The employee has to undergo various suitability tests, question answer sessions. In other way, the interview gives an opportunity to the candidate to express himself, sell his abilities and interest in front of the interview panel. Now, let's see the various modes of interview. The major modes of interview are as flashed on the screen: telephonic interview or a video conferencing interview where the distances are involved, one-on-one group interview and a panel interview where the candidate sits in front of the group or the interviewing persons. Now, after understanding the modes of interview, now we will see what are the types of interview. First is behavioral interview. It is also called as a competency based interview, in which interviewer asks candidates to recall a specific incident where they were faced with a set of problems and how they reacted on it. In stress interview, where the employer uses a succession of interviewers whose mission is to intimidate the candidate and keep him or her off balance. In technical interview, the major focus is on problem solving and creativity. The questions asked during such interview aim at problem solving skills and likely show the candidate's ability and creativity. During the group interview, a number of candidates are interviewed together, and in panel interview, an applicant answers a question from a group of people who then make the final decision of the selection process. At the end, a role play interview is an exercise where candidates act out a scenario with either a group or an interviewer to determine how suitable the candidate is for a particular role. The role plays test how candidate might approach difficult situations that frequently occur in the business world. Now, moving on to part 2 of the presentation, interview skills. First, we will go through few guidelines which one must follow before and during the interview. A candidate must carry out detailed research of the company where he has applied for a job. Before going to interview, one must reread his resume and the job advertisement. One must try and check himself in a full length mirror before going to the interview. Rehearsing the likely questions and their answers is also plays very important for achieving the success in an interview. Proper dressing for the interview is very important. One must arrive on the time at the interview venue and check out the competition level. For this, candidate must see how many candidates have applied for the same job. He must try and interact with them and assess the competition level. While facing the interview, one must use appropriate language. One should not talk too much and should not be too familiar with the interviewing panel. One should not show his overconfidence and remain very careful while answering various questions which are asked by the interview panel. After studying the guidelines, now we will see some of the common interview questions, and they are: tell me about yourself. Why did you leave the last job? Are you applying for other job? Why do you want to work for this organization? Now, moving ahead on to the one of the most important aspect, that is interview caveats, that the common mistakes which candidates do while facing an interview, and they are being too friendly, not listening to the questions carefully. The biggest mistake the candidates do is that they are found poorly prepared for the interview. Sometimes they make general statements without any firm base or firm answer. Making derogatory remarks about others is also considered as a negative aspect of the candidate by the interview panel. Now, we will study body language. What is body language? Body language is a form of non-verbal communication, consists of body pose, gestures and eye movements. So, all these movements of a person at times provides cues to the interviewing officer in terms of attitude or state of mind of that candidate. For example, aggression, attentiveness, boredom, relaxed state of mind, pleasure and amusement. So, what one must do to enhance his body language? He must practice the things which are flashed on the screen. Maintain a good eye contact, bring smile on his face, remain in an open body language, make sure that his eyes sparkle and he remains confident in front of the interview panel. At the end, interview communication skills. One can enhance and gain good interview communication skills if he maintains a good handshake with the interviewing officer, he pronounces his name properly, becomes confident, makes a confident posture, remains in good eye contact with the interviewing panel and listens very carefully to the all questions and answers in a deliberate manner with a positive answer. At the end, moving on to the part 3, SSB interview. Most important step, or you can say a milestone before moving into the Armed Forces Training Academy for becoming an officer. NCC Special Entry Scheme has 50 vacancies twice a year in Officers Training Academy, Chennai, and 64 vacancies per year are reserved in regular course of Indian Military Academy for C certificate holders, irrespective of position in merit, subject of passing UPSC examinations and clearing of SSB interview. The SSB interview aims at testing officer-like qualities in the candidate. It comprises of a panel where the selection is based on the concept of manasa, vacha and karmana. It is a process of 5 to 6 days wherein the candidate on the day 1 undergoes a screening test followed by psychological test, and on the 3rd and 4th day he undergoes group test by the GTO. At the end, on the 5th day, the final assessment and result is declared, followed by the candidate has to undergo medical examination. Broadly, if we study, the SSB interview is of 2 stages, a stage 1 of screening stage and stage 2 wherein after screening one has to undergo psychology, group testing officer task, interview and conference tests. At the end, to summarize, if one wants to perform well into the interview and face the interview with confidence, he has to understand the interview process thoroughly, research the company, rehearse his answers before the interview. He must listen carefully to the questions, keep all his answers positive and deliver a firm handshake and smile at the end of the interview. So, dear cadets, at the end I would like to say that the key to effectively interview include preparation, energy, enthusiasm and strategy, taking time to do company research, understanding where you fit within the organization and having clear idea of what you can contribute in the time well spent. Research and preparation will differentiate you from other candidates and may be the difference between leading your dream job and being passed over. With this, we come to the end of the class. Thank you. Jai Hind.